LiberalViewer present.
So last week at the end of a nearly hour-long news conference on healthcare reform, President Barack Obama took a now-famous question about the arrest of his friend, Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates, and after admitting to not knowing all the facts, he made several points, including these first two.
I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home.
And it was that last point about the stupidity of arresting Professor Gates that set off something of a media firestorm that nowhere burned brighter, of course, than over with our friends at Fox News, as you can see, for example, in this clip.
This is a law student who went to Harvard Law School. He went up there in front of the entire country and said in this order, A, Skip Gates is a friend of mine, so I'm biased. B, I don't know all the facts. In that case, there should be no C. That should be the lesson that he teaches this country. That should be the lesson that he learns from this. If A, you're biased, B, you don't know the facts, there is no C. You do not make a comment.
Now, those are pretty strong words coming from Fox News anchor Dave Briggs, particularly given that Dave Briggs' biased comments without facts about an Islamic conference in Chicago were the topic of my last video, and even worse, when Fox News started analyzing the police report, they used a cop instead of a lawyer and never reported that the First Amendment to the United States Constitution protects a person's right to insult a police officer without getting arrested, and that Massachusetts courts have applied that principle to the disorderly conduct statute under which Professor Gates was arrested, writing, quote, "To be disorderly within the sense of the statute, the conduct must disturb through acts other than speech. Neither a provocative nor a foul mouth transgresses the statute," unquote. But I never heard anyone on Fox News question the constitutionality of arresting someone for insulting a police officer, and in fact, the Fox News analysis of the police report I saw ended instead with the question you can see here.
For a second time, I warned Gates to calm down while I withdrew my department-issued handcuffs from their carrying case. Gates again ignored my warning, continued to yell at me. It was at this time that I informed Gates that he was under arrest. After the second time, when you warn someone, must you arrest them, or is there some discretion involved in that?
Talk about asking the wrong question, but actually, I was disappointed to find very little discussion of this First Amendment question in any of the media coverage I saw, the closest coming from not a lawyer, but from Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman, appearing on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos and asking this question.
Did he commit a crime? Did he do anything that you could plausibly say you should slap handcuffs on? Right? And there's a really peculiar thing here, which is, think about how conservatives are reacting. Over the last few weeks, we've been hearing endlessly conservatives talking about how the Obama administration is tyranny. It's a police state where, it's fascism, it's awful. But they think it's perfectly reasonable to slap handcuffs on a middle-aged man who walks with a cane because he said something rude to a policeman. My God.
My God is right, and importantly here, the analysis does not even require a racial issue because having worked as a public defender for several years, I saw a lot of police reports describing the arrests of people of all different ethnicities for these kinds of trumped-up disorderly conduct charges, though, of course, that doesn't mean there was no racial aspect, considering, for example, the hypothetical from Professor Michael Eric Dyson on CBS's Face the Nation last Sunday here.
If that had been not Professor Gates, but Henry Kissinger, another Harvard professor, and George Bush, the president, and he said, "That's my friend," and a black sergeant arrested him, he'd be doing traffic duty right now. The police union would not stand behind him, and I think we'd have a much more different understanding and interpretation. So these things do make a difference. Class makes a difference, race makes a difference, testosterone makes a difference.
And beyond Professor Dyson's hypothetical showing how race may have entered the mix, there's also the long-term negative police experiences of minorities and specifically African-American men that you can hear described, for example, from Democratic Party operative Donna Brazile back on ABC's This Week here.
It's not that Black people walk around waiting to be called victims. It's because it is a dreadful fear. I'll never forget the lessons my parents would teach my brothers, not us, but the boys, that no matter what happens, if you're stopped by the police, do whatever you're told. Put your head down and just wait. Don't say nothing. It is painful. It is shameful.
Of course, that lesson to shut up and do what you're told when confronted with the police is not painful and shameful for everyone, it seems, and in fact, that was the big lesson our friends at Fox were attempting to convey back in their analysis of that police report, which ended predictably like this.
I think there's a lesson in here for all of us of how to deal with the police officers even when we think we're in the right. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
So what do you think? In a country where free speech is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, should it really be possible to get arrested for just yelling at or insulting a police officer? And in contrast, given the realities of the way police officers actually behave, is it still the best policy to just shut up and do what you're told when confronted with the police, whatever activity is supposedly protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution?
YouTube, you decide.